Happy birthday, dear Megan Mouse. Happy birthday to you. Keep going.
In season 1, we met with 4 incredible guests and chronicled their path to finding purpose. In season 2, we're back with 4 more incredible guests, and we're going to walk through their lowest moments. We're going to walk through some of their highest triumphs. And I'm Chris Dreisbach, and welcome to Repurposed.
Do it again.
No.
Do a double. Double.
No.
Single.
Ruin everything. All right.
Somehow even the clap is complicated. Not that kind of clap, Andy. Not from your generation. Different clap. All right, great way to start this interview off. We're talking about the clap.
Now we're talking about the clap. Yeah, we had it.
Hey, Meg, so let's start a little bit backwards. Let's talk a little bit about the Grace Project and some of the work that you do. What led you to start the Grace Project?
Grace Project was really just trying to recreate an experience that I had that got me off the streets, and then continued to kind of grow from there. The more sober I got, I like to say, the more I realized that I wanted to kind of expand the mission, because it's all about restoring hope. My addiction to me was a state of hopelessness, so I thought. And I realized that people kind of get to that state of hopelessness from things other than just addiction. So, yeah.
So I've known you for a long time now, and you've been, attempting...
An angel?
An absolute angel, yeah.
A total delight the entire time that you knew me.
Clearly no, because I knew you during some real struggles, some real difficult times in your life. I think we need to illustrate the darkness before we dive too far into the light. So even though you are a perfect angel now, can you explain a little bit about, your childhood, your youth, and then, how that led you into your addiction?
So, childhood, I don't really know how to describe it other than chaotic. People often ask me like how my upbringing was, and I don't necessarily like to focus on like that piece of it, right? Like, oh, well, what did your parents do wrong or anything like that? The way that I look at it is it was just chaotic, and initially to respond to that was like acting out I was getting in trouble. It started with like me getting kicked out of class in 3rd grade, started progressing from there. Then it was like shoplifting. Eventually it led to drugs. I didn't know how to deal with that chaos. So eventually that kind of showed up as an addiction. When I like drank for the first time, and when I smoked for the first time, and when I used for the first time, I didn't care about what was going on internally, because that's really what it came down to. Not really the like external situation, but like what it was doing to me internally, and I didn't care about anything. And I wanted to continue to not care about anything, and it kept taking more and more and harder drugs. And fast forward, that's how I ended up being introduced to you and being in treatment and in and out of jails and homeless and all of that. But at its core, it was just I didn't know how to deal with what was going on internally.
For some reason, I don't often get to meet people during the best times of their life.
But you get to help get them to
I
the
know.
best. Yeah,
I get to
which is
witness
really cool.
so many incredible moments for people, but oftentimes my first introduction is during some kind of tragedy, during some kind of nightmarish scene or scenario for each person, and then to fast forward several years later and get to see the shining beacon of hope that people become after being non-angelic nightmares.
Right.
Is still one of the coolest things I get to experience. So I met you in who knows what year.
God, yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about the treatment experience that kind of led you into this interesting path.
Well, I was in treatment 71 times, just detox residential admissions.
That's barely any.
Barely any. It's less than 100, so it kind of doesn't count. And then outpatients, I mean, Blueprints alone, I think I was in 5-6 times. So yeah, I think when you factor that in, jail stays, recovery houses, it's well over 100. Part of why I got stuck in that cycle was constantly running from what my feelings were. So I'd come here and it was okay, couple weeks in, I'm starting to feel things, I'm starting to deal with things, I'm gonna run because I don't want to deal with that. And that was kind of what it was. It was this vicious cycle of just okay, I want to be sober, I want to be clean, I want to start doing better, I don't want to live this life, but I didn't know how to cope with what I was going through. So I would start feeling some things and I would run. So I AMA'd from treatment, so I left against medical advice all but 6 times. It had to, for me, get to a point where the pain was just great enough on the outside, because I'm a digger. I keep digging. So I'm it can get worse. It's okay. I can handle it. I used to hear people say, I wanted to die, but I couldn't kill myself. And I'd be you're full of it. But this last time around, I truly knew what they meant, because I did not want to be alive anymore. And I think that getting to that state is where I needed to be to finally just take suggestions and listen and kind of stick it through.
Can you give me some of the precipitating events that led you up to feeling that way? That feeling that leads us as humans to really see no other way out. So I think you expanding on that would be pretty cool. What were the precipitating events?
One of the biggest things that I focus on is I started living outside of my morals and my values. The more important drugs became in my life, the further a backseat everything else took. So it started getting harder and harder to live with myself. And, I think I've always been a pretty good person. I care about people. I'm very family oriented. And I started losing sight of that. And when I realized I was losing sight of that, I started getting really disgusted with myself. But I couldn't stop being this person that I'd become, because for me to do that meant that I wasn't going to be able to get drugs, right? And then I was going to be sick. So I kept piling on more guilt and more shame. And I think the biggest turning point for me was when my family was kind of just there's nothing else that we can do for you. We love you. When you want help, we're here. But we kind of have to wash our hands at this point. My grandmother decided that she was going to let me stay in her sunroom and let me come in and shower. And understandable, she wanted the door locked. So here's this woman who is just an absolute saint. She really is. I love her dearly, and she's trying to help me when nobody else would. And my response to that was to break into her house and rob her. And she woke up while I was in there. I remember hearing the fear and the panic in her voice when she realized that somebody was in her house because I left the window open. As much as I wanted to say hey, I'm here, it's just me, you're safe, I knew if I did that, I would have to give the things that I stole back, and that would mean I couldn't get high, and that would mean that I was going to be sick. And anyone who knows anything about what happens in the brain, that wasn't an option to me, right? Because my priority before survival instincts or anything else is getting high. I waited till she went downstairs. I snuck back out the window. I called my mom and was hey, it was me in the house. This is what I am. And, I'm going out to Kensington. And it was such a pivotal moment because it broke me. It absolutely broke me, because I couldn't bring myself to tell her I was there. The fact that I couldn't do that, the fact that it was finally screaming in my face that the only thing that mattered to me anymore was drugs, on the outside at least, right? On a surface level, because it hurt me that I felt that way. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. And on top of that, I finally said to my mom, because she used to catch me with needles on my lap and, bags around me because I dipped out. And, I'd be I don't know how that got there. That must be yours, right? So bizarre. But I would be caught red-handed and be I don't know how that got there. But here I am completely broken at this point, just saying this is what I am. It just destroyed me. And from that point on, I remember being out in Kensington and any time that I would look into a mirror, just crying. I was so disgusted with myself. I now finally had nobody but myself. And that's kind of where I started turning to what my idea of God isn't what everyone else's is, but what I call my God, and praying and getting to a point where I was even I can't do this anymore. So either help me, intervene in some way, or just kill me, like just let me die. It comes back to that core of like that hopeless feeling. I felt like I had nothing to live for. I felt like I didn't have a purpose. I felt like I was just a waste of space. A big part of it was like, again, feeling that rock bottom, but being able to climb out of it, you know, was realizing that I do have a purpose, you know, which I didn't realize I did, and that everything that I'd been through up to a certain point, like there was a reason. And every time I look back on everything that I've been through, things that I've done, things that have happened to me, I wouldn't change any of it because it got me to where I am now. But I definitely was at a point where I was very welcome to death before I had all of that.
So you mentioned a little bit about homelessness and being homeless, and that's a lot of the work that I do here locally is to help the unhoused. So can you talk a little bit about your homeless experiences, where they were, anything of note that you want to mention there?
I did like a little homeless tour. So what I would do is, you know, I would go to treatment. I'd go to other states thinking that changing locations was going to be the answer. Problem was I took me with me everywhere I went. So what ended up happening is, again, I would start feeling uncomfortable feelings and I would want to run, and I would try to find the worst hood in whatever state it was that I was in, you know, where it was going to be easiest to find drugs, and then I would end up homeless out there. So I was homeless in Texas for a little bit, homeless in California. I was homeless in Michigan, in Philadelphia, out in Overtown in Florida. It's so bizarre because it's different based on where you're at. Like every experience that I've had homeless was different based on where I was, right? Like each state was different. The other crazy part is like it was by choice because I didn't want to have to go home and face my mom or see my family. So like it was by choice until this last time around. I was out in Detroit, and I remember like the thought process of like, well, being homeless out here is weird. It's different than what I'm used to. That was a big part of like why I wanted to get back to Pennsylvania. I was like, my mom's never going to kick me out, so like I'm never going to be homeless, not by choice. And it sounds so bizarre, but I was like, it's so much better being homeless in Kensington as an addict. And I was always just drawn back to there, and I think it's just what I was comfortable with. It was what I was used to, but it was really different. And like the things I went through in the different places, right? Overtown was one of the most violent. California, I was almost killed. So it's bizarre, and it's a very like unsafe feeling. And I just like felt so alone. But it was easier to just kind of keep silencing those feelings and pretending like everything was okay. But what was really happening is I was just like adding more and more trauma onto the things that I was running from. So it was bizarre. Looking back now, like it's scary. And the time I didn't realize how scary it was. And I thought that the things that like were happening, they were just normal, like they came with the territory. But my life is so much different today when I think back on some of the things that I experienced, you know, in those different stints of homelessness. I'm just like, it's really a blessing that I'm alive. It really is.
So let's talk about that experience meshed with the experience with, you know, substance use disorder, et cetera, et cetera. How did that kind of lead you towards starting the Grace Project? Maybe let's discuss like what the Grace Project does for people, because I think the Grace Project is awesome.
I think it is too. I love the Grace Project.
I'm like the second biggest Grace Project fan ever.
Next to me.
After you.
I love it. I love it.
So like I really do want to profile and discuss some of the cool stuff because I got to come volunteer with you.
You did. You got to clear out a Walmart for Grace
we cleared
Project.
out a Walmart.
Yeah.
It was super fun.
Which you have to do that again.
We're definitely going to be clearing Walmarts for others.
Have
yes.
to do that. You know, it's so crazy because when people ask about like how Grace Project started, I always like forget a key detail, right? One of the many times that I was going to treatment, I think I was going to Florida that time, but I was on a plane. I sat next to this guy, and, you know, it was this older gentleman, and he asked like where I was going. For some reason I was honest, and I was like, oh, well, I'm going to rehab, right? So like we're talking, and he was basically asking like, well, what do you want to do with your life? You know, if you get sober. And I had said like, oh, I want to like help people. Like I want to have like some sort of nonprofit because I've always had this passion for helping others. Years went by and I was still in and out of treatment. Fast forward to about 5 years ago, I'm out in Kensington. I'm praying for some sort of intervention. I'm in an abandoned house and I was bawling my eyes out. And I was just like, please intervene in some way or just like take me out. Show me that my life is meant for more. So I walk out and this lady grabs me. At first I thought I was getting robbed. So like I turn around like ready to fight, and this other woman comes up and she's like, no, she just wants to talk to you. The woman who grabbed me spoke primarily Spanish, so it was hard for us to just communicate, the two of us. So this lady who was with her that was translating, she was like, something's drawing her to you. She feels like you don't belong out here, and she wants to know your story. Now, if that's like not a direct answer to what I consistently been like, show me a sign, but I'm very stubborn. So I was just kind of like, weird, you know. But for some reason, I was completely honest. And I was like, well, you know, I'm on heroin and crack. I have felony warrants. My family wants nothing to do with me. This is what I am. And for some reason, she still wanted to help me. So the lady's like, well, she wants to take you into her house and let you get a shower, give you warm food, and give you clean clothes. I just told this woman that I robbed my own grandmother, right? And I just told her that I had felony warrants out. I just told her that, you know, I was addicted to drugs, and here she is still wanting to help me. So me and her go in, the other lady doesn't come in, so the communication is a little bit more broken, right? So like we walk in, she points upstairs, she's like, up, you know, so I walk upstairs, she starts the shower, I get in, I get out of the shower, there's a little dress waiting for me, and then came downstairs and there was food. So I finished eating and she's standing there and like, you know, she gives me a hug before I leave. When we pulled away from each other, we both looked into each other's eyes and still like holding each other. And we both started crying. I know what it meant for me. I felt like she was a messenger of something, and it was reminding me that like I was still a person and I still mattered. You know, that somebody who didn't even know me saw something more in me that I wasn't seeing in myself anymore. And I don't know what it meant to her. I don't know why she cried. I don't know what that came from, but it was a life-changing moment for me. That was the last night that I spent in Kensington. I called my mom the next day and I said, hey, I'm ready to get help. I asked her if she could bring out some water and, you know, sandwiches when she picked me up. And she did. And my mom used to put me on a pedestal because I'm her daughter. The same way that I used to put myself on a pedestal and be like, oh, I'm too smart to become a drug addict, or I'm too good for that, right? Because I definitely, like that stigma that I hate that people put on addicts, I used to do that. So my mom she'd come pick me up from and be like, why are you out here with these people? But what she realized that night when she was handing everything out, she like got like cold waters and like Wawa. It was really cute, you know? So she brings it out and we're like handing it out, and one of the girls out there started crying and like telling my mom her story. And that was the night that my mom stopped separating me from everybody else that was out there and realized that everyone out there is just like me and I'm just like them, and you know that this thing doesn't discriminate. You know, it was a big moment for her and it was a big moment for me because I liked the way it felt to help other people. I hadn't felt that way in a long time. So when we were leaving, I like had said, and I didn't necessarily believe it because I still didn't necessarily think I was going to stay sober, but I was like, one day I'm going to come out and I'm going to help out here. You know, fast forward a year later, because that night my mom actually turned me into jail. So I was in jail. Then I took something called drug court. I went to treatment, went into a recovery house. So I had about a year sober. And my mom reached out to me and she's like, hey, if I wanted to bring peanut butter and jelly out to Kensington, where should I bring it? And I was like, hold on, lady, you are not going to Kensington without me. Pump the brakes. So I decided to like, you know, reach out to some of my friends and like say, hey, does anyone want to do this with me? Like get a bunch of stuff together and let's make this a thing, you know, because it was like at the start of COVID. So groups weren't going out there anymore. You weren't supposed to. And we were like, we don't care. These people need help. You know, and that was the birth of Grace Project. And it was supposed to be something that we were going to do, like me and my mom here and there. When I saw the interest of like other people to want to help, first of all, like my world changed because like the world used to be such a dark place for me, and it just continued like to get brighter and brighter. And now I'm seeing all these like people wanting to help others that they don't even know and the response to it. But I'm at this point only a year sober. So when people wanted to donate money and stuff along those lines, that was a big reason for incorporating as a nonprofit, because I'm like, well, I have to protect these funds and not have sole access to it, have eyes on it. When we initially incorporated as a nonprofit, I was getting money from unemployment during COVID. I used that money to file the paperwork and all that. I'm like, let me use it for something good, pay it forward. What it became, I couldn't in my wildest dreams have ever imagined that Grace Project would turn into what it is today. And it started with just our Kensington outreach program. So, you know, going out there, bringing out basic human needs, some clothes, hygiene stuff, like we do wound care out there, we bring out food, just things that people just need to feel like a person. And the whole idea behind what we bring out there and what we do is recreating the experience that I had with that woman on a larger scale and hopefully creating a ripple effect we help somebody, then they in turn help somebody else. And it continues to grow. You know, the more sober I got and the more that, you know, I thought about like what my addiction came down to at its core, that state of hopelessness, I started thinking, well, that's not the only time people feel that way. What other scenarios can lead to it? You know, poverty and illness. Our program for children impacted by poverty, addiction, or sickness. The way I describe it is like Make-A-Wish on a smaller scale and a little bit more inclusive. And we give children that are nominated a whole day that's tailored just to them. We pick them up in a limo, take them somewhere fun, buy them presents, make a video of it, and it's a really cool experience. And then we have our Hope for the Holidays program, and that's our program for families. We know we do. You've actually sponsored that in the past. So we do 2 to 4 gifts minimum per child. We hand wrap them, we deliver them. If they need a Christmas tree, we get that, holiday meal, you know, and it's really cool. So it's just Grace Project has continued to grow, and we hope to continue to grow more and help more people. I have different things in my mind of like where I want to go with it next to be able to continue to expand what that reaches.
Tell us all the new stuff. I want to hear it.
The ideas.
Yeah, I love ideas.
I really want to kind of move into the space of helping women who have been sex trafficked, women with a lot of trauma from being on the streets or from their addiction. Obviously, I can relate. So I kind of want Grace Project to touch all of the things that like I can relate to directly. My dream for it is that it will be in every area I've been homeless in. So like that there will be chapters of it. I would hope that next would be Overtown out in Florida. But I do want to have more programs for kids to help them not go down like a bad path if they're going through things outside of just our Give a Little Hope program. I think the Kensington outreach is pretty much as big as it's going to get. It's turned into us being like a resource hub for people as well. We do hope to get a lot out there and be able to like have showers and like a trailer and just like an actual physical resource center outside of us just doing street level outreach.
I love that. And one of the ties that bind in almost every story that we tell and that we hear from really anybody in recovery is that there's almost always an improbable angel that appears. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the universe tosses these people, these angels, if you will, at us. And I almost feel like in my own life, sometimes I'm so blind to everything that's going on around me, I'll shun that angel and shove it away.
Yeah.
Every time I think about this, every time we discuss somebody's story, every time there's just something new that kind of pops up, and I'm like, wow, if I had any level of self-awareness, could I have possibly avoided all of this other stuff? Yeah. And I think awareness, self-awareness, awareness of the situation around you is one of those things that kind of drives you towards recovery.
Yeah.
And I got misty-eyed, of course, while you were telling that story, because it makes me think to all of the people that kind of stepped in improbably and helped me when they didn't have to help me. And then seeing you, a person who I've seen in hideous situations, just so bright and so shining and so happy. I mean, this has got to be one of my favorite Repurposed episodes ever. Just saying. Sorry to everybody else. But, yeah.
And it's so crazy because I struggled with this concept of a higher power because I'm very like, I need like tangible evidence of stuff, right? And you had just mentioned it, like thinking, you know, back to all the people that could have been those angels and you just weren't open to it. When I think back, like the evidence has been in front of me the entire time. I mean, there's so many people that I encountered, and I always say that they planted seeds, right? And this woman just watered those seeds and it grew. It's just so bizarre because there are so many people that I think of in my story that I'm like, wow, they're my angels. Like they didn't give up on me, or not necessarily even that they didn't give up on me, but they didn't know me and they tried to help me. But my eyes were closed to it. So I had no idea and I was missing what was right in front of me. But when I think back, I'm like, it was always right there. You know, I just had to be open to it, and it's cool, and I just hope that I can be that light in somebody else's life, even if it's just planting the seed, you know, and somebody else waters it. There's so much beauty in the world, and we just have to open our eyes to it. You know, when you're in a dark place, it's really hard to see the light, and that's kind of where I was at for a while, and that's part of why, like, when I started Grace Project and I saw all these people that wanted to help and wanted to get involved, like I said, my world just kept getting brighter because I was like, oh my gosh, there's good people out there. And then I start thinking back and I'm like, oh my gosh, there was good people out there all along. There's goodness everywhere and there's angels everywhere, you know, just angels on earth wanting to help people.
And it kind of kicks me back to season 1, episode 2 with Spike Cohen. And Spike talks about the...
Cohen? Another
Spike
Cohen?
Cohen. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
weirdly
look at
similar.
that.
Two
Look at that.
Cohens?
Two Cohens.
2 seasons. He talks about the multiplicative factor.
That's a nice word. Say it
Great
again.
word, right?
Multiplicative.
He talks about that multiplicative factor, sort of when I help you, you go on and help the next person. That next person goes on and helps another person, another person, another person, another person. And before you know it, years have gone by and tens of thousands of people have found healing and hope because of you stepping out on a ledge and doing something that other people are afraid to do.
Right.
So I am always super honored to be able to profile the stuff that you're doing because you are that multiplicative factor. You are the reason that I exist. You are the reason that I do the things that I do because how amazing is it to just watch all the people that you're impacting and all the people that you're helping right now.
Right.
And we are still young. You are still young. I am old. But like
I'm getting up there. My knees are starting to like crack when I stand up and stuff. So I don't know.
can relate to that as well. And how many more people are you going to be able to impact over the next decade or
the goal.
2 decades or 3 decades? And I'm sorry to Andy, because he's old for real.
Dead then.
Yeah, he'll be dead then. But now let's talk a little bit about that future. What do you want to do when you grow up? Because I often think about what I want to do when I grow up, and it's a scary prospect.
I don't know. I do a lot right now. It's just crazy because when I finally got sober, my life skyrocketed. I started Grace Project, then I got back into school and graduated with honors, and then, I get a job in the field, and, now I'm director of a million different things at the facility I work for. I don't know. I kind of feel like I get guided to where I should be. The only thing I know is that I want to be fulfilling a purpose. Like that is the only thing that I really care about for what I'm going to continue to do. It helps fill my cup up to be helping other people. So I don't really have an answer. I want Grace Project to keep growing. I want to make sure that I'm always doing something that's helping others, and kind of just go like where the wind blows me and where God guides me. And, hopefully that's continuing to be in a space that I can help somebody else to then help somebody else, and have that kind of ripple effect. But yeah, I don't know. Get into real estate. We'll see.
You could become an astronaut.
That would be a dream. I changed my answer. I want to be an astronaut. I love space.
I just
That's
threw
what I
that
wanna
out
be.
there super randomly.
Well,
but,
that's what I want to be.
All right.
Do you have any connections? Astronaut school?
No.
I feel like you know everybody.
I'm sorry.
You have to know an astronaut.
I mean, maybe somebody watching this video.
Will you let me know if they
knows
message you after saying that they're an astronaut?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Meg's looking for a job.
As an
Yeah. I don't know how many are out there. So let's say in theory, there's somebody watching this video on whatever streaming service, they end up watching it on. And they are a young person who really just feels like the way you described you felt earlier. Mm-hmm. What do you say to them as a person who has relocated purpose, as a person who is living a beautiful life now? What do you say to the person who's struggling and doesn't believe that living that kind of life is possible?
I would tell them that simply it is. As long as somebody's still breathing, that there's hope for them. That's why, or how do you say, we don't believe in hopeless. To just not give up and to allow somebody else who has made it out to guide you, because that's where I continued to fall short, was I thought that I had the answers, and then I would think that it's not worth it because I'm just going to pick back up. But like anybody can do it. If I was able to, literally anyone can. And I would just tell them to reach out to somebody. Reach out to me. I'm always available, and find out how somebody else before you did it. The most important thing, again, comes down to like just having a little bit of faith in yourself. If you're still alive, you're here for a reason and you can do better. So I would just push them to be open to that idea and open to taking some help from somebody else.
There's always so much shame and fear associated with being in a place of vulnerability that it makes it so difficult to actually step out of that box and reach out for help, because then we have to admit that we don't have all the answers. Then we have to admit that we're not the be-all, end-all. And that is still difficult at times deep in recovery to be able to step back and say, I don't have all the answers. I truly need somebody else's opinion. And I truly need somebody else to guide me through this difficult patch. And I've had enough of those in the last 17 years that I can feel that on a real deep level.
Yeah.
So just for contrast, and this is a tough question, so I'll give you a second to think about it. Worst moment of your life? best moment of your life? Hit me with both.
Worst moment of my life, I would say the feeling that I felt hearing my grandmother scared when I broke into her house, because it was a very eye-opening moment in a bad way, because that was the moment that I had decided that I hated myself. I decided in that moment that there was no parts of me left that were worth loving, and I was wrong about those things, but I felt that way, and that was 100% the worst moment of my life. Best moment is really hard because I have so many beautiful things in my life today. There's so much love. Being an aunt is one of my favorite things, and I remember when, my nephew was born. My niece was born, then I had, my other niece was born. And like yesterday, I was at Peddler's Village with my niece Aria, and those babies are my whole heart, and they make me happy, and being with them makes me happy. My grandmother, she trusts me. I know the code to the lockbox that has the spare key to her house today. I have keys to my siblings' houses. My mom trusts me in her house. My whole family can rely on me and can count on me, and they know that, and it took some time. It took some time for my grandmom to sit down with me, for my uncles to sit down with me. But we got there. When we're doing things like as a family, or I'm sitting with any of my family, we'll have those moments where I almost get teary-eyed because I'm like, wow, I didn't think that this was ever going to be possible. Recently, I just moved in with my boyfriend. This is, a big deal for me, and it's a beautiful thing, and, it's me, him, and our dog. Everything with Grace Project. When Jackie London got an Emmy for the coverage she did, and as a present she gave me the Emmy, and just the rush of emotions that came then of oh my God, how big Grace Project's gotten. And there's just so many moments, but I would say most of them are directly linked to love for me, because I love my family, I love the people in my life, I love Grace Project. I can't pick a best moment because there's an abundance of them now.
And there's so many more to come.
Yeah.
It was a trick question.
Nah.
I just wanted to see where you were going to go with it, because people ask what the greatest moment of my life. I've been asked that question so many times, and I can never, ever figure out a real answer. Mm-hmm. There's so many blessings and great joys that come with being able to live those two separate lives. Mm-hmm. The life that we used to live, and then the life that we've been granted as a result of having that self-awareness, right, and being able to take advantage of those opportunities. I truly don't even have any other questions. I think that was fucking powerful. Harley.
What about when you guys met at Blueprints?
I don't even remember, so that's why I avoid that. You want to talk a little bit about when we first met?
So I actually don't remember the first time that I met you. However, Tucker, when he was here, continued to go above and beyond for me. It got to a point where I was in treatment so many times that my insurance actually had cut me off and wasn't willing to pay anymore. And I desperately needed help, and I called Tucker, who then reached out to you. And you knew who I was because I was a problem the many times that I was in services at Blueprints. Despite that, you actually agreed to scholarship me under some strict rules, including that you guys did not let me go to the parade after the Eagles won the Super Bowl, because I was here during that. And Mike was like, yeah, absolutely not. You need to be here, which I understand. But, we had interacted a couple of times and then obviously reconnected through Grace Project. But Tucker was the one that really knew me, despite that it actually came from you when I was able to get scholarshiped, not only here, but also into your houses at that time. So you were one of the people who, for whatever reason, didn't give up on me.
I tend to never give up on anybody, but and this is why. Yeah. This is why it never makes sense to give up on anybody at any given moment, because you were well beyond reasonable hope. I live in unreasonable hope. So that meshed really perfectly for me. Mm-hmm. But the scores of people who look at, the pictures that you're going to see on this video, the pictures that I remember seeing, beyond reasonable hope. Yeah. And for anybody who is beyond reasonable hope, or anybody who feels like they're beyond reasonable hope, or anybody who's watching somebody who's beyond reasonable hope, give them extra love, because that extra love is what creates this.
Right.
incredible people being able to do incredible things and live free and live happy. This is easily, by far, just an awesome day. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here.
God dang it, that was a good story.
It was a good story.
We
I
can
know.
still, all right.
If it comes up, it comes up.